Thank you so much, Shashank. That was
Pleasure.
such a serene feeling to hear you perform.
Thank you.
Now we will start our interaction, sir. Uh, so first, let's start about talking about the uniqueness of this instrument and anything specific that people should notice from next time anyone performs Indian flute. Sir, your voice is mute. Shashankji?
Yeah, sorry, I got logged out. I don't know what happened.
Yes, sir. We can hear you
Can you hear
now.
me?
Yes.
Hello?
Yes, Shashankji, we can hear you.
I just can't hear any one of you.
We can hear you, Shashankji. We can hear you.
Okay. So,
Yes.
flute is a natural instrument which has the least of man made material involved in making. So, every flute is something, I mean, it's a unique piece by itself. You can't predict how, you can't really say that one flute would sound the same as the another flute. So, since it's a bamboo material, so every flute has its own unique tone, unique facility. The same flute, made in the same key, two of them won't be the same. It's just like human beings, they're different. They have different characteristics. Each one of them react differently when you play. So it's one of the most wonderful instruments that one could find. Yeah. In terms of what people can see or notice, should notice, the flutes are of different sizes. The longer the flute, more the bass tone. So the shorter the flutes, they're called the piccolos. Piccolo is a Western term. The frequencies are much higher. So basically, it's like the longer the flute, you go into the bass octaves. The medium-sized flutes are the middle octaves, and then the shorter flutes are for the upper octaves or top octaves. For instance, here I'll show you the range. This you can say a semi-bass octave. And then the piccolo. And of course, this is the real long bass flute. So the flutes are of many kinds. So performers, especially like me, we mix and match different sizes of flutes to give listeners the best experience possible. So that's something that they can watch out for. But as you know, flute is just an instrument, but music, what we learn, is most important, and the type of music that we try to project is more important. Of course, the flute as an instrument lends many different sounds into the vast repertoire of sounds that the music world has. So, flute has its own unique contribution to the sounds of the world. So,
Thank you so much for that interesting fact,
I
Shashankji.
can't hear you.
Hello. Uh, can you hear me now?
Hello.
Uh,
I just can't hear any one of you.
sir,
Can you
can you
hear
hear
me?
me now?
Yeah, very well. Yes.
Okay, sir. So that was really interesting to know the
No, I
nuances of
lost
the.
you again. I'm so sorry. This connection is a bit
Kanaka
active.
ji, can you rejoin the meeting again? While
Okay,
Vidya ji can continue.
sure, sure. Shashankji, can you hear me now?
Yes, very well. Please go ahead.
So, uh, can you tell us about the incident your father took you to Guru T.R. Mahalingam and he told your father that you should go to a guru who doesn't teach you how to play a flute. Instead, you should go to a guru who sings and you can play along. Can you tell us about this?
Yeah. When I was 6 years old, one day, see, my father was a flute player himself, though he was a professor of biochemistry. Um, he didn't want me to learn the flute for whatever reasons, because he thought the flute was a limited instrument, and he was facing difficulties mastering it. And therefore, I started learning violin for a while, and then one day I was able to play my father's flute, and all the compositions I had learned vocally quite effortlessly. And my father was, at this point where he didn't know how to shape up my talent and how to move forward, perhaps. So the great T.R. Mahalingam was on a visit to Bangalore, and my father took me to him. So the legend, asked me to play one day, and then he would send words for me to go every day. So for about 15 days, he heard me at a quite an intense level. And then on the 15th day, he gave me a flute and asked me to play after him. So in about 1 or 2 hours, I was a child. I don't remember so much of it, but I do remember that I played after him. He wanted to test me. And then finally gave a set of advices to my father, saying that my father should stop playing flute at home, and I should not listen to any flute recordings, should not go to any flute concerts, and I should more work on acquiring the knowledge of music at an intense level. And so my father was quite baffled at that, but then he could see that you know T.R. Mahalingam was getting to a point where he wanted me to develop my own style of playing the flute, and all that I required at that point was the knowledge of music. So then that's how I moved to Chennai from Bangalore to learn under the great Professor K.V. Narayanaswamy, the doyen of Carnatic music. And the rest is really history.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Shashankji. That was really interesting to know. Uh, what do you feel about Guru Sishya Parampara and journey with your Guru?
Um, I'm going to be a bit blunt and honest. The whole Guru Shishya Parampara is a very tricky subject to speak of. In the past, the Gurus and the Sishyas stayed together, and that was a very great relationship, I could say. But then this also led to, with no offense meant to anyone, the Gurus wanted their students to entirely learn from the Guru and would not even allow, influences of other great musicians or great styles of music to creep into their style. So this, of course, allowed for the gurus to make sure that their parampara kind of flourished or was taken forward by the Sishyas. But this also led to a point where the gurus' idea of holding up their student to their style of music would not go down so well, um, down the students, for the students, because for people, when the guru who was himself alive and the creator of that style, the students had to work a lot to come out of that style and do something on their own, which was not truly allowed by the gurus many times. So I was extremely fortunate to have my father, who was a very educated man and looked at music very differently, with a much broader view. And also, I was so fortunate to find my guru, Professor K.V. Narayan Swami, who, in fact, in a matter of 3 years, I only studied with him for 3 to 4 years. Um, if you ask me, he only taught me some 6 or 7 compositions or ragas. But what he taught me in every 3 hour or 4 hour lesson was the essence of music and the aesthetics, and a kind of a foundation that I could just base my music on and create something on my own. That was his idea and concept of how Shishyas should learn. So I was extremely fortunate that way, that even my Hindustani music guru, Pandit Jasraj ji, they all were kind of very broad-minded to allow the student to learn the foundations and good values of music, which include purity of notes, accuracy of beats, and then carve a niche for themselves with develop their music the way they wanted. So this was the mainly the fond thing. I mean, that comes to my memory fondly. I was not restricted. I was encouraged to, um, you know, go on. And so, if you hear me today, I don't sound like my guru, but I'm ever grateful that I got the foundation that I needed from the guru, who was a legend himself. Perhaps if I had copied my guru, I may not have been successful. The gurus, I feel very humbly, whether it be, there are so many gurus who are teaching, talking about it on SPIC MACAY's forums. But I personally would only like to say that the Guru Shishya relationship is a very special one. And of course, the student has to find a good guru, which is very hard, and one has to be really lucky. And vice versa, the guru also has to find a student who's receptive to, the very advanced thinking that the guru might have, and be able to communicate to the student what he thinks at a very intellectual level. So that having said, the gurus should always inspire the students to get a good knowledge from the guru and move on, not being confined to their guru styles or thought processes. So that's, I would think, that should be the relation between a guru and a shishya.
Thank you for explaining about our sampradaya with your opinion, sir. Thank you so much. Sir, while we were discussing, you have explained about the process of unlearning and relearning when you went to your guru. Can you explain us a little about it?
Um, See, as I said, to get the right get to the right guru, it's a very difficult process. You have hundreds of people giving you hundreds of advices, and there are moments when the town which you are in may not have the best of gurus available. So I would like to place on record that every guru is important, because at whatever level you learn, whether it's like a primary school teacher or a high school teacher, everybody is important in the process. But then there is a point where you get to a guru who sees the talent in you and knows how to shape you up, and is very confidently, he's very confident about it. So some of the things that I had learned earlier on, perhaps when I came to KV Narayan Swami sir, had to be undone to get to his style of what he was, wanting to teach me, or you can also say the vision that he had for me. So it was a process. It was also a process of adapting to a certain style of Carnatic music. See, the Carnatic music is there all over the south of India, and every style has something unique to itself. But when I came to my guru, who was in Chennai, he had a certain style of presentation, certain style of thought processes. So I had to unlearn, some things that I had learned previously to that, in order to create a foundation to receive the, instructions of the current guru. But in hindsight, I would definitely think that was the best thing to have happened, because it's like sometimes you will not know, you will not have arrived at the right guru, for whatsoever reason. So you'll have to kind of learn something, then finally unlearn something, and then add on to it on top. So
That was interesting, sir. Sir, you have been a child prodigy. So you were performing and also learning with various gurus. So how was this balance between being a learner and also at the same time being a performer?
um, this is a standard statement every performer would make, that he's a learner, and the same thing goes with me as well. I've now performed more than 35 years now, and I'm still a student. This is not to say, to trying to be modest about it, but in any field, including music, it's an extremely complex field. There are ever-changing values. You have to adapt to situations. So every inch of my concert career has taught me so many valuable lessons. Even today, I learn. Every day, I learn on the job. So in the initial years, yes, it was hard to be a performer. See, when you come to 12, the top of the field, where you compete with, I should say compete in this sense, because though Carnatic music and its field is not a competition in any sense, but when you, as a 12-year-old, reach the top slots of the field, you are, indirectly in a competition with some of the legendary musicians who are in their 50s and 60s. So it is not an easy process. You have to not alone compete musically, you have to also compete otherwise, where there's a lot of issues involved because of the age difference. You many times have had accompanying artists who have ably supported me and nurtured my talent, but they were all in their 60s and 50s. For instance, my music academy performance when I was 12 years old, that slot was only meant for very, very legendary musicians. Like, for instance, the year before I played, Pandit Ravi Shankar ji had played, Pandit Hariprasad Chaurase ji had played. So even this slot that I was given was to have been played by Dr. L. Subrahmanyam and L. Shankar. And since their father passed away, I was called into that slot. And who were accompanying me? The legend Umyalapuram Shivaramanji on the Mridangam. So he was a man who had played for the doyens of music and had nothing to prove to anyone. So when you play with such artists, it is not alone a learning experience, it is an extremely challenging, competitive environment, and the whole world's attention is on you as a 12-year-old getting that slot when so many had slogged for the slot even at their 40s. So it was an extremely difficult process. So my father, I think, was extremely good in managing that. He kept me on track of training and performance together hand in hand, and because he knew music very well, and he also knew how to manage things being an academician. So I think but it has never been easy. The journey has always been um, interesting, difficult, exciting. You can say everything in one.
That's really interesting, sir. You are almost your professional life and your age is almost similar, which is why
Yeah.
you've done magics, is what we feel. Sir, you have co-created Shashank's style of Carnatic flute. So, could you tell us about it?
See, flute making technology is a very primitive one, or at least it was primitive in south of India. Those who made the flute had just learnt by the tradition, and there were a lot of shortcomings in terms of its pitching accuracy, and therefore one day I was so frustrated that I wanted to get made good instruments. So I contacted some of the makers in north of India, um, and I luckily arrived at Mr. Harshvardhan, who is a flute player himself and a fantastic maker in Delhi. So I sat with him, explaining to him what I need and which are the notes that are not working well. For days together, I would stay with him, and that led to the creation of a South Indian flute that was, if you see the finger positions, was totally different from the traditional South Indian flute. So over the years, we have built some fantastic instruments, and which has come to be known after me because I was the only person playing it. I'm more or less this only person playing it even now, because a lot of people had difficulties in adapting to the new finger positions. So apart from my students, only a very handful flute players perhaps have adapted to that change in the instrument, a slight change, I would say. But now we have taken it even further. So Carnatic music flute, as the flute lovers would say, was more a mid-octave instrument. What I say by mid-octave is something in a shorter range, because the nuances to be produced by nuances of Carnatic music, it was very hard to have a long bass flute like in North Indian tradition, because the finger the whole placements was far spread out for the finger. So for the finger agility and mobility and all, you needed a mid-octave flute, and that's how Carnatic music, Carnatic flute players used shorter flutes. So there's another reason also. Carnatic flute players use predominantly the short flute in concerts because back in the 1900s and 30s and 40s, microphones were rarely available. So when they performed in venues where there was no microphone, they still had to be heard. So therefore, they used this very powerful, high-pitched instruments. So going, with the advent of technology, the flutes became longer and longer. Now, I've been able to solve, with the help of another wonderful flute maker, who's also an engineer. So they've been able to build tunnels inside the flute, and so now we are able to place the fingers ergonomically, where we want, and then build tunnels within to make that possible. So a lot has gone in, and it's a very technical thing to explain to the common audience. But yeah, so it has come to be known as Shashank style of flute. So it has solved a lot of issues from making finger positions comfortable to the tone better. See, for instance, we have this lip plate like in a Western silver flute. This acts like an engine, you can say. So a light push of the air, it can produce a deep tone. So it's a lot of technical stuff, but in a nutshell, that's what it is.
That's really inspiring, sir. I mean, you're not just a performer, but also a lot of engineering has gone into your expertise. Uh,
Now, I should say I shouldn't claim that I did it alone, but I was instrumental in thinking about it. But I had flute makers who were willing to work with me on this, and this is going to go a long way. Now, I've changed my whole instrument to be an octave lower, because here I'll tell you another interesting thing. The world, including all the European audience, anybody outside of South India, were not used to flute that were short, other than in the folk tradition. People for long had heard Panalal Ghosh and the likes of Pandit Hari Prasad Chaurasia, and could not understand why flute were so sharp toned as an instrument. And even today, that is the case. So I had to figure out how to communicate Carnatic music to a non-Carnatic music audience. Well, I did well with my short instrument, but I could say I have taken the journey much further now with longer flutes, which are much more soulful to hear, and is, after all, a hardware, and the software is the music. So I've been extremely happy with the progress that this whole journey of flute making and trying out various instruments has taken me. It's a very interesting journey.
we are very sure that you will create more magic, sir. Since you were talking about the differentiation about flutes, the European flute and the Indian flute and all, could you tell us about your collaborations, either Indian or abroad?
Well, I've always been a keen collaborator, though I should make a point, it's not a criticism. SPIC MACAY has not really embraced different collaborations across genres broadly, because they've liked to preserve the art form in its original form, which I truly appreciate. But on the other hand, I have always been extremely interested in collaborating with musicians around the world, and this is including hundreds of performances with North Indian musicians and even Japanese musicians, to European jazz musicians, Western classical musicians, and recently I've played in with so many symphony orchestras especially commission projects and quartets and so on. It's always a very interesting experience because the same 7 notes is universal to every genre of music in the world. And when a meaningful collaboration could be done, why not? It brings about so many interesting facets. Indian music, because of its ability to improvise, can really work with any system of music in the world. Okay, and then, but that doesn't mean there are no challenges. The Western music system brings about harmonies, which are an extremely fantastic concept, which has captivated the world. And so I lost you, but anyways, if you are able to hear me, I'll continue. So the Western classical music has brought about harmonies as a gift to the world, and jazz has brought about many chords. So it is so interesting as to how the same 7 notes are perceived so differently by various different genres and musicians. So this has led me to many collaborations with piano players, orchestras, and bands around the world. And there are many CDs. In fact, one of my CDs with the great John McLaughlin, one of the greatest jazz guitar players, even got the Grammy nomination in 2009. It was a fantastic experience working with him on an album called Floating Point. So it has been a wonderful journey and something that I hope to continue. And I should share with you that my new CD will be out fairly soon, where I've taken traditional South Indian compositions and got symphony orchestras to record with it, with beautiful harmonies, and it will be hopefully out soon.
It will be definitely a pleasure for us to hear you, sir. Sir, how was your journey till date with SPIC MACAY? Could you share us your experiences?
Is one of the best contributions to this country's cultural platform. And I don't know why some people are still not aware of SPIC MACAY. I was so fortunate to play for SPIC MACAY for the first time when I was, how old was I? I think 12 years old. In Secunderabad, I began performing there. And since then, I must have played 1,000 concerts or more. I don't know how many. I do have an account of it, but I've literally played in all corners from Assam, Arunachal Pradesh. And it has taken me down through some extremely memorable moments and routes. I really should thank SPIC MACAY that I also kind of grew with them. They were generous enough to invite me as a 12-year-old, because if you see SPIC MACAY's artist generation. So I was very fortunate as a 12-year-old to join this circuit and play actively. And I thank Dr. Kiran Seth for inviting me and his confidence in me. So it has been a tremendous journey. I've really enjoyed it so much. And even today, no matter how big or how small we are, I still cherish playing for students. And I don't distinguish between a college student or a government high school student or a primary school student. And this one thing has really interested me, not alone in India, but I've also performed the world over, in America, in Europe, for school children. I believe it is the primary duty of every musician to work towards, taking their art to primary school children, middle school children, high school children, and expose them to this great art form. It's a responsibility that some have chosen to do and some have chosen to avoid. But I sincerely feel that it's an absolute need, because we have to give back this great tradition and keep it for the future, and this is the only way perhaps to do.
Thank you, sir. I think it is just because of people like you, the movement is going on so strongly. Uh,
No, I
as
really should thank all the volunteers. I mean, this is the only movement, I think, which has done a selfless work, even be it at any level, whether it be at the volunteer level, whether junior volunteer or senior volunteers, the office bearers, everybody has, contributed so much to this movement. And I only wish it grows up much larger, and the governments of every state support it wholeheartedly. Because taking, sponsoring music concerts is one thing, but at a very fundamental level, exposing children to music is a very, very essential thing. This is something that the European governments and governments of other countries around have made it a part of their fundamental curriculum in schools, where every student has to pursue an instrument or two as part of their grades, which unfortunately in India has not taken off to the point where it has to be. But, yeah, I would also like to add one more thing, which may be contentious here, that SPIC MACAY should embrace younger generation of artists who are much junior to artists like me, who are very talented and can take this art to the children. Because artists like me who are busy otherwise performing can only dedicate very little time. But they should look up into artists who are talented and qualified and can inspire small children, can take the art to remote corners of every country, who have the time to spend as they establish themselves as musicians. Their services should be utilized, because this is the only way this art form can percolate down to the last child. And of course, the identity of this country is not often with software engineers or doctors or other professions. If anybody who speaks about India will speak about a Taj Mahal, about its cultural fabric, about the food. So it is extremely essential that more needs to be done.
Thank you, Shashankji. Yes, under the able and powerful leadership of Dr. Kiran said, even we, all the volunteers, are trying to do that. We will definitely keep your words in mind.
Yeah.
Sir, could you give any message to the SPIC MACAY volunteers? We would be extremely delighted to hear you.
I don't know. I think they're doing great. My pranams to Dr. Kiran Seth and every volunteer who has put in time and effort. I would like to congratulate all of them. And I only wish they inspire more people around to take up this cause and propagate it further. And because India is so full of great art and art forms. So, I mean, I don't know. I just think everybody is doing a great job, and it needs more and more of such great people to keep this going. And I also wonder who will continue this process under Dr. Kiran Seth and even after Dr. Kiran Seth, because this movement is very precious.
True, sir. Thank you so much. We would wish that it would continue and also pray. Sir, what message would you give to the students, aspiring students who would want to continue with flute?
It's a very difficult thing. Although everybody sums it up in a word or two, every musician or a student has his own path to success. I can't define success or journey. I mean, I can't say that it is the same for everybody. Everybody comes with different backgrounds, but my only thing is find a good guru, which is a very tough thing, and sadhana is something that is extremely important. Achieve the best, be broad-minded, and take the music as a journey. It doesn't end the moment you get on the stage.
I think we've lost him, and he's
Yes.
Yeah,
joined.
I'm sorry, there's some network interruptions today. So every student, the basic to any success is good training and extremely good practice. Achieve to be, aim to be a maestro at any cost. And I think once you're a maestro, there's nothing to stop you. There's absolutely nothing to stop you. And be adaptive and don't be narrow-minded in your approach. Narrow-mindedness, I mean, from the perspective of, following one pathway or everything is music. Please understand that everything is music. Find your aesthetic balance within you and continue the sadhana. I'm sure you will have absolutely success. And always an element of learning should always prevail, and develop, I would say, like me, develop good friends who can keep you kind of advised on what they think. I mean, you have to, it's a very lucky thing that I have, say, my father today continues to be my guru, and somebody who can bounce off my ideas and give me advice, or maybe give another perspective to what I think. So this is very important for artists. Artists should develop, a base with many friends who could tell them on their face what they did wrong and what they did right, because we cannot be complacent. So this is an extremely important thing for artists.
Thank you so much, Shashank Subrahmanyam, sir. On behalf of the entire SPIC MACAY family, I would like to say that we're really indebted to you sir, for having shared with us your experiences with your guru, your journey with Carnatic music, SPIC MACAY, your life service volunteers, and message for the musically inclined youth. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for SPIC MACAY having me, and we are going through a tough time. Especially the art world is, I don't know when it will recover, but keep at it, SPIC MACAY, and I will lend my support wholeheartedly as much as I possibly can, and we'll.
Thank you so much, sir. We really
Thank
do.
you. Yeah, thank you so much for having me. Bye bye.
Thank you so much, sir.
Pleasure.